His voice woke me before dawn, soft, careful, almost rehearsed. "Babe, don't wait up for me tonight. Late meeting." The clock glowed, 5:12 a.m. Meetings don't happen before sunrise. He didn't flinch. He just slipped his tie over his head and avoided my eyes like a man studying the floor for guilt. I watched him through barely open lids, still, quiet, listening more than looking. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a single vibration. He checked it so fast he forgot I was in the room at all. A name flashed. Not a name, actually, just a heart emoji. He turned the screen away. Something in my chest tightened, but my face remained calm, unbothered. I'd learned to let silence do the heavy lifting. He kissed my forehead like a man following steps he no longer believed in. "I love you," he whispered, softer than usual, too soft. A man terrified of being questioned. When the door closed, I got up. My feet moved before my mind did. Instinct, or maybe memory. I walked into the living room. Something was off. A cushion slightly lifted, a corner of fabric pushed back. I reached behind the couch and felt metal, cold, light, familiar in a way it shouldn't have been. A woman's gold hoop earring. Not mine, but I had seen it before. On her. He'd promised me he was done with her, done with the lies, done with the mistake he swore meant nothing. He cried for weeks after I found the messages the first time, begged, collapsed on the floor like a man watching his life burn. Said he'd blocked her, said he'd changed, said he was ashamed of what he'd become. I wanted to believe him, God I did, because believing him was easier than rebuilding myself alone. But now, this? Her earring behind my couch. A perfect little confession made of metal and audacity. At first I felt absolutely nothing, just a quiet, expanding emptiness. A stillness that didn't belong to someone hurt, it belonged to someone awakening. When he came home that night, I tested him. A small, harmless test. "Did anyone stop by today?" I asked it casually, stirring tea, eyes on the steam, not on him. His answer was immediate. "No. Why?" I nodded, smiled even. Something inside me clicked into place. Not anger, not heartbreak, just clarity. He sat on the couch later, right above the evidence, ridiculously confident, laughing at some show, resting his hand on my knee. I touched his hand back, calm and controlled, even as my stomach twisted around the truth. He thought I still lived in the world where I believed him. He had no idea that world was gone. The next morning I began quietly, clean, methodical, a strategist, not a wife. While he showered, I checked his phone. Not by guessing, he always changed his passcode when he felt guilty. But guilt makes people predictable. He always picked numbers tied to me. My birthday unlocked it. Of course it did. He loved symbolic honesty. It made him feel safer in his lies. The messages weren't there. He'd always did. But deletion isn't absence, it's confession. I installed a recovery app, waited, listened to the water running, listened to myself breathing, and the texts returned like ghosts. Her name, her photos, her "I miss you," her "your wife won't know," her "same spot tonight?" He replied with a simple, "can't stop thinking about you," a sentence that had once belonged to me. I saved everything. Screenshots, timestamps, backups. Not for lawyers, not for revenge. For precision. For control. For the moment he would discover that the woman he believed was fragile had already started stitching her exit. I checked his wallet next. Receipts, hotel keys, little pieces of his double life. He was careless now, comfortable in his deceit. Comfort is louder than guilt. By the time he came downstairs, I was pouring cereal, smiling, asking about his day. He kissed my cheek and told me he loved me again. I felt nothing, just the calm before a necessary ending. That evening, after he left for his meeting, I followed at a distance. Not close enough to be seen, but close enough to observe. He walked into the same apartment building she lived in months ago. He didn't even check behind him. Predictable men are easy to dismantle. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I just watched the lights flick on in her window. Two silhouettes. Two liars. Two people who thought they could outmaneuver a woman they assumed was blind. I left quietly. Too quietly. Silence is the most generous warning. 2 days later, the evidence was printed. Neat, chronological, undeniable. I placed the envelope on the kitchen table as he walked in. He looked tired, wrung out, not from work, but from the secret life he was sprinting to maintain. "What's this?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just slid the envelope toward him and stepped back. He opened it, slow at first, then frantic. Pages shaking between his fingers. I watched the color drain from his face, the way his mouth fell open, the way his chest stuttered around breath. Finally, softly, Where did you get all this?" "I looked," I said. Just that. Nothing more. No explanation, no accusation, no anger. He collapsed into the chair like the air had been sucked out of him. I mean, I thought I was going to end it," he whispered. "Again?" He froze. That single word hit him harder than the proof. He realized then that I knew about more than just the messages. The earring, the visits, the lies layered over lies. He buried his face in his hands, a grown man unraveling. But I remained standing, steady, silent, composed. I had become the calm in the eye of his storm. 320 words. I walked past him, opened the hallway closet, pulled out the suitcase I had packed the night before. His suitcase. When I set it beside his chair, he looked up like a child abandoned in a store, confused, lost, terrified. "You're leaving?" he asked, hopeful, desperate. "No," I said. "You are." He stood, panicked. "I can fix this. Please, I'll block her. I'll prove it." I shook my head. "You already proved everything." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. A small movement, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. He broke then, crying, begging, promises spilling out like cheap perfume. But I felt nothing. Nothing except a calm, clean sense of alignment, like the world had clicked back into place. "My sister's earrings?" I asked quietly. His face hardened. His last lie. I thought they were hers, yes." I didn't correct him. I just opened the door, held it, waited. He looked at the threshold like it was the edge of an execution chamber. Maybe it was. Maybe betrayal always dies at the door. He rolled the suitcase out, stopped once, as if waiting for forgiveness. It never came. I closed the door behind him, soft, final, a sound like a heart stitching itself shut. The house was painfully quiet after he left. Too big, too empty, too honest. I walked back to the couch, picked up the earring, turned it between my fingers. It no longer felt like proof, just a relic from the moment I stopped waiting to be loved correctly. I placed it in a drawer, not as a memory, but as a warning. I sat at the kitchen table, his chair still pushed back from when he crumbled. I didn't move it. Let it sit there like a shadow he no longer owned. People think the trail breaks you. It doesn't. It refines you, sharpens your instincts, cuts away your illusions. He thought he could lie forever. He thought I would crumble. He thought I would stay. He never realized that silence is the first step toward freedom. By the time he did, I was already gone on the inside. And that was the real ending.